They called her the Ice Queen. For 3 weeks, Alice Prescott sat in a crowded Manhattan courtroom and didn't say a single word. She watched her billionaire ex-husband, Harrison, destroy her reputation. She watched his new, young fiancé smirk from the gallery. Everyone thought Alice was defeated. Everyone thought she was weak. But they were wrong. She wasn't silent because she had nothing to say. She was silent because she was waiting for a trap to snap shut. And it all came down to one unexpected question from Judge Holloway that changed everything. You think you know how divorce court works? You have no idea. This is the story of the quietest woman in the room becoming the most dangerous. The silence in courtroom 302 was not peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating, and tasted like expensive cologne and anxiety. Alice Prescott sat at the defendant's table, her back as straight as a steel rod. She wore a charcoal grey suit that was 3 seasons old, a deliberate choice, or perhaps a necessity now that her assets had been frozen for 6 months. Her hands were folded on the mahogany table, her fingers interlaced so tightly that her knuckles were the colour of bone. To her left sat her attorney, a court-appointed lawyer named Gregory Miller. He was a good man, tired and overworked, with a stain of coffee permanently etched into his tie. He was out of his depth, and he knew it. He was fighting a war with a pocket knife against a nuclear arsenal. Across the aisle, the atmosphere was entirely different. It was a celebration. Harrison Prescott, the CEO of Prescott Dynamics and the darling of the tech world, leaned back in his leather chair. He looked exactly like the magazine covers portrayed him, charming, rugged, and exuding the kind of casual confidence that only comes with a net worth in the 10 figures. He whispered something to his lead counsel, a shark of a man named Silas Blackwood, and they both chuckled. It was a low sound, but in the acoustic perfection of the courtroom, it hit Alice like a physical slap. "Mrs. Prescott," Gregory whispered, leaning in close to her ear. "We need to object to this next witness. If they bring up the incident at the lake house, it's going to look bad." Alice didn't turn her head. She stared straight ahead at the empty judge's bench. "Let them," she said softly. Her voice was a low rasp, unused for hours. "Alice, please," Gregory hissed, frustration leaking into his tone. "Silence is not a strategy. Harrison is painting you as unstable. If you don't fight back, the judge has no choice but to rule in his favor. You'll lose the house. You'll lose the alimony. You could lose custody of Leo." At the mention of her son, Alice's eyes flickered, a microscopic crack in the ice. Leo was 7 years old. He was currently staying with Harrison's sister, confused and likely being fed poison about his mother. "I said, let them," Alice repeated. The heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and the bailiff announced, "All rise." The Honorable Judge Lawrence K. Holloway entered. He was a man of 60, with a face carved from granite, and eyes that had seen every variation of human greed and misery. He didn't suffer fools, and he particularly despised high-profile divorces that turned his courtroom into a media circus. He sat down, adjusting his robes, and peered over his spectacles. "Be seated," Judge Holloway grumbled. "Mr. Blackwood, call your next witness." Silas Blackwood stood up, buttoning his $5,000 suit. He offered a sympathetic smile to the jury, though there was no jury here, just the judge. It was a bench trial, per Harrison's request to protect family privacy, which really meant keeping Alice's defense out of the press. "Your Honor," Blackwood said, his voice smooth as velvet, "we call Jessica Vane to the stand." A ripple of murmurs went through the gallery. The press, seated in the back rows like vultures on a telephone wire, scribbled furiously. Jessica Vane, the personal assistant. The woman who had been photographed on Harrison's yacht 3 days after Alice had been served divorce papers. Alice remained frozen. She didn't look back as the heavy doors opened again. She could smell the perfume before she saw her. Chanel No. 5. It used to be Alice's scent. Now it belonged to the woman who had stolen her life. Jessica walked down the center aisle. She was 24, stunningly beautiful, with blonde hair cascading over shoulders that were currently covered by a modest navy blue cardigan. It was a costume, Alice knew. Jessica was playing the role of the innocent bystander, the supportive partner, the victim of Alice's alleged jealous rage. As Jessica took the stand and placed her hand on the Bible, Harrison looked at her with a gaze of protective adoration. It was a look he hadn't given Alice in 15 years. "State your name for the record," the clerk droned. "Jessica Marie Vane," she said. Her voice was soft, trembling slightly. Perfect acting. "Ms. Vane," Blackwood began, approaching the stand. "Thank you for being here. I know this is difficult for you. Can you tell the court about the night of November 14th? Alice closed her eyes. November 14th, the night the world ended. I was at the Prescott residence," Jessica began, looking down at her hands. "I was dropping off some contracts for Harrison to sign. He was in the shower. Mrs. Prescott, Alice. She came downstairs. She was holding a wine glass. She looked out of it." "Out of it," Blackwood pressed. "Intoxicated." "Objection." Gregory Miller half rose. "Speculation." "Sustained," Judge Holloway said, though he looked bored. "Just tell us what you saw, Miss Vane." "She was stumbling," Jessica corrected herself, her eyes wide and innocent. "She started screaming at me, calling me names. She said she would make sure Harrison never saw another dime of his company's money, and then—" Jessica paused, a single, perfect tear sliding down her cheek. "Then she threw the wine glass at me. It shattered against the wall, inches from my face. I was terrified." Gregory Miller looked at Alice. "Tell me that didn't happen," he whispered. Alice didn't answer. She was remembering that night. She remembered coming downstairs. She remembered finding Jessica not dropping off contracts, but wearing nothing but one of Harrison's dress shirts, drinking Alice's wine. She remembered Jessica smiling, a cold, predatory smile, and dropping the glass herself. "Who's going to believe you, Alice?" Jessica had whispered that night, stepping over the shards of glass. "You're the depressed housewife on anti-anxiety meds. I'm the future." In the courtroom, Jessica wiped her eye. "I just want Harrison to be safe. I want Leo to be safe. Mrs. Prescott she's not well." Blackwood turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this pattern of aggression is why we are requesting full custody and a complete nullification of the pre-nuptial agreement based on the mental instability clause." Judge Holloway made a note on his pad. He looked at Alice. Most women would be screaming by now. Most would be crying, shouting, "Liar!" disrupting the court. Alice just sat there. She picked up a pen and drew a small, perfect circle on her legal pad. Then she drew another circle inside it. She was staying quiet, and to everyone watching, it looked like an admission of guilt. But Alice was counting. She was counting the lies, and she knew something they didn't. She knew that lies, like debt, eventually had to be paid with interest. The lunch recess was a mercy. Alice sat on a bench in the hallway, sipping lukewarm water from a plastic cup. Her lawyer, Gregory, was pacing back and forth, talking on his cell phone to his paralegal, trying to find dirt on Jessica Vane. "There has to be something," Gregory was shouting into the phone. "A speeding ticket, a college expulsion. She can't be this clean." He hung up and sighed, sitting next to Alice. "Alice, We're getting crushed in there. Harrison's team has presented forensic accountants showing you mismanaged the household funds. They have the nanny testifying that you stayed in bed until noon. And now Jessica. The nanny was paid a $50,000 bonus last month, Alice said. It was the first full sentence she had spoken in hours. Gregory stared at her. What? The nanny. Sarah. Harrison paid off her student loans and gave her a $50,000 severance from the household account 2 days before he filed for divorce. Check the transaction logs under HJP Consulting. Gregory's eyes went wide. He scrambled for his laptop, opening the discovery files. Why didn't you tell me this 3 weeks ago? Because 3 weeks ago, Judge Halloway wasn't listening, Alice said calmly. He thought I was just a bitter ex-wife. Now he's bored. He's suspicious. He's wondering why a billionaire needs to destroy a woman who supposedly has nothing. That's a risky strategy, Alice. It's not a strategy, Gregory. It's a trap. Across the hallway, near the water fountains, Harrison and Jessica were standing with Silas Blackwood. They were laughing. Harrison had his hand on the small of Jessica's back. He looked younger, vibrant. He looked like the man Alice had met 20 years ago in a coffee shop, back when they were both broke students, sharing a distinct dream of the future. She had built him. That was the part no one talked about. When Harrison was coding the prototype for Prescott Dynamics in a basement, Alice was working 2 shifts at a diner to pay the rent. When he was too shy to pitch to investors, Alice wrote his speeches. She coached him on how to shake hands, how to make eye contact. She was the architect of the man he had become. And now, he was using the voice she gave him to destroy her. Harrison caught her looking at him. His smile faded. He walked over, leaving Jessica and the lawyer behind. "Alice," he said. His voice was not unkind, which made it worse. It was the pitying tone one uses for a sick pet. "Look, this doesn't have to go on. Silas has a settlement drafted. It's less than the original offer, obviously, given the testimony today. But it's enough. A small apartment in Queens, a monthly stipend. You can see Leo on weekends, supervised." Alice looked up at him. "Supervised?" "You're not well, Mel," Harrison said, using his old nickname for her. "Jessica is terrified of you. The court thinks you're unstable. Just sign the papers. End this. Don't make me put Leo on the stand." The air around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You would put our son on the stand?" Alice asked softly. "If I have to protect him." Harrison adjusted his cufflinks. "I'm getting married in the spring, Alice. We're moving on. Prescott Dynamics is going public globally next month. I can't have this baggage dragging behind me. Take the deal." Alice stood up. She was shorter than him, but in that moment she seemed to tower. She leaned in close, so close she could smell the coffee on his breath. "You think you're winning, Harrison," she whispered. "You think because I haven't screamed, I'm not fighting. But you forgot one thing. You forgot who organized your files for the first 10 years. You forgot who set up the offshore servers in the Caymans when you were optimizing taxes in 2018. Harrison's face went pale. The confident mask slipped for a fraction of a second. That's paranoid nonsense. Those accounts are clean." "Are they?" Alice tilted her head. "Then why did you move the encryption key to a physical drive? The one you keep in the safe behind the painting in your study? The painting I bought?" Harrison laughed, but it was a nervous, jagged sound. "You're bluffing. You haven't been in the house in 6 months, and even if you knew about it, you can't access it. It's biometric, voice and retina." "True," Alice said. She checked her watch. Court is resuming in 5 minutes. You should go prep your next lie, Harrison. Make it a good one." She walked away, leaving him standing in the hallway, a flicker of genuine fear finally igniting in his eyes. Back in the courtroom, the afternoon session was brutal. Silas Blackwood called a forensic psychiatrist, a man named Dr. Aris Cole, who had never treated Alice but had reviewed her files. "In my professional opinion," Dr. Cole stated, adjusting his glasses, "Mrs. Prescott exhibits classic signs of narcissistic collapse. Her silence is not stoicism. It is catatonia induced by the loss of status. She is incapable of parenting." Judge Holloway rubbed his temples. "Mr. Miller? Cross-examination?" Gregory Miller stood up. He was emboldened by the tip Alice had given him earlier about the nanny. "Dr. Cole, how much were you paid for this testimony?" "I was paid my standard expert witness fee," Dr. Cole said smoothly. "And does your standard fee usually include a weekend stay at the Prescott Villa in Tuscany?" Gregory asked, holding up a piece of paper. "We have flight records showing you and your wife traveled there on Mr. Prescott's private jet last month." The courtroom gasped. Judge Holloway's head snapped up. That was a consultation trip," Dr. Cole stammered. "A consultation?" Judge Holloway asked, his voice booming. "In Tuscany?" "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Prescott, needed stress management." Harrison shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Silas Blackwood shot daggers at Gregory. For the first time in 3 weeks, a small ghost of a smile appeared on Alice's face. It was starting. The foundation was cracking, but the real blow was yet to come. "I have no further questions," Gregory said, sitting down. He looked at Alice and nodded. "Call your next witness," Judge Holloway commanded, looking significantly more awake than he had 10 minutes ago. Silas Blackwood stood up. He looked rattled. He needed a kill shot to recover from the Tuscany blunder. "Your Honor, the plaintiff rests. However, we would like to submit one final piece of evidence into the record. A voicemail left by Mrs. Prescott on Mr. Prescott's phone the night of the separation." Alice stiffened. She remembered leaving a voicemail. She had been crying, begging Harrison to work on their marriage, begging him not to destroy their family for a fling. Blackwood played the audio. But it wasn't Alice crying. The voice that filled the courtroom was Alice's, but the words were cold, hateful, and vicious. "I hate you, Harrison. I hate Leo. I wish you were both dead so I could take the money and leave. I'm going to burn the house down with you in it." The courtroom went deathly silent. Gregory Miller looked at Alice in horror. "Alice, did you say that?" Alice shook her head, her face draining of color. No, I never. That's AI. That's a deep fake." "It sounds exactly like you," Gregory whispered. "And with the tech Harrison has—" "Your Honor," Blackwood said, smug satisfaction returning to his face. "This voicemail proves that Mrs. Prescott is a danger to herself and others. We move for an immediate protective order and revocation of all visitation rights." Judge Holloway looked at Alice. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were hard. "Mrs. Prescott," he said, "this is a very serious piece of evidence." Alice stood up. She couldn't stay silent anymore. This was the line. They could take her money, her reputation, her pride, but they could not take her love for her son. "It's fake," she said, her voice shaking but audible. "He owns an AI audio company, Vocalize. It's a subsidiary of Prescott Dynamics. He synthesized my voice." "Sit down, Mrs. Prescott," Judge Holloway said sternly. "You are represented by counsel, unless you wish to take the stand." Alice looked at Harrison. He was grinning. He had won. He had used the very technology they built together to frame her. Alice started. "If you take the stand, Mrs. Prescott," Judge Holloway warned, "you open yourself up to cross-examination on everything. Your finances, your mental health history, the adultery accusations." Alice looked at Gregory. He shook his head slightly. "Don't do it. They'll shred you." But Alice realized she had no choice. The trap she was waiting for hadn't sprung yet, and Harrison had just dropped a bomb she hadn't anticipated. She had to pivot. "I will take the stand," Alice said. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Harrison's smile widened. He wanted her on the stand. He wanted to humiliate her publicly. "Very well," Judge Holloway said. "Bailiff, swear her in." Alice walked to the witness stand. Her legs felt heavy, but her head was high. As she sat down, she looked at the judge. She saw something in his eyes. Curiosity. And then Judge Holloway leaned forward. He didn't ask her about the voicemail. He didn't ask about the wine glass. He didn't ask about the money. He looked at the papers in front of him, then took off his glasses. "Mrs. Prescott?" the judge asked, his voice quiet enough that the stenographer had to lean in. "Before counsel begins, I have one question." The room held its breath. "You have been silent for 3 weeks," Holloway said. "You have let them call you a drunk, a gold digger, and a bad mother. You haven't objected. You haven't reacted. My question is, why? Why would a woman who helped build a billion-dollar empire sit here and let it be dismantled without a fight? Unless—" He paused, locking eyes with her. "Unless you are protecting someone. Who are you protecting, Mrs. Prescott? Because it's clearly not yourself." The silence that followed Judge Holloway's question was different from the silence Alice had maintained for 3 weeks. This wasn't the silence of submission. It was the silence of a dam about to burst. Alice leaned into the microphone. Her hands, previously trembling, were now steady. She looked at Harrison, whose confident smirk had faltered into a look of genuine confusion. "I was protecting my son's father," Alice said, her voice clear and resonant, "because I knew that if I told the truth, the whole truth, Leo wouldn't just lose his mother to a custody battle, he would lose his father to federal prison." Silas Blackwood shot up from his chair. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness is making unsubstantiated criminal accusations to deflect from the evidence at hand." "Overruled," Judge Holloway said sharply. He didn't look at Blackwood. He kept his eyes locked on Alice. "Continue, Mrs. Prescott. That is a heavy statement. You'd best be able to back it up." Alice nodded. "The voicemail you just heard. The one where I supposedly wished death upon my family. It was created using an alpha build of Vocalize 4.0. It's a proprietary voice synthesis engine. We know Mr. Prescott owns a tech company," the judge said. "That doesn't prove he faked it." "No," Alice agreed, "but the metadata does. You see, Your Honor, Harrison didn't write the core code for Vocalize. I did. In 2014, in our garage on 4th Street. And because I knew the potential for misuse, I embedded a digital watermark in the frequency generation. It's a signature, invisible to the human ear, but visible on a spectrograph. It spells out a name in binary code within the sound waves. Harrison's face went from pale to a sick shade of grey. He whispered furiously to Silas, who looked like he had just swallowed a lemon. "A watermark?" the judge asked, raising an eyebrow. "And what name does it spell?" Alice looked straight at Jessica Vane, sitting in the front row. "It spells Leo. I named the algorithm after my son." The courtroom buzzed. "Prove it," Judge Holloway challenged. "I can," Alice said. "If the court allows me to run the audio file through a standard open-source spectrograph software." I can do it right here, right now, on my lawyer's laptop. Silas Blackwood was shouting now. This is highly irregular. We cannot allow the defendant to manipulate evidence on an unsecured device. Mr. Blackwood, sit down, Judge Holloway barked. This is a bench trial and I want the truth. Bailiff, give the laptop to the witness. Connect it to the main display. For the next 10 minutes, the only sound in the room was the clicking of keys. Alice worked with the speed and precision of a concert pianist. She wasn't the broken ex-wife anymore. She was the brilliant coder who had been hidden behind Harrison's shadow for a decade. On the large screen behind the witness stand, a jagged waveform appeared. It was the visual representation of the hateful voicemail. This is the audio, Alice explained, pointing to the screen. Now, I'm going to isolate the frequency range between 14 and 16 kilohertz, the range where the human voice naturally lacks resonance, but where the AI fills in the gaps. She hit a key. The waveform shifted, the chaotic spikes smoothed out, and there, repeating over and over, in the visual pattern of the sound waves, was a distinct, blocky pattern. 110101. LEO, Alice translated softly. That watermark only exists in files generated by the software. A real human voice recording would never produce that pattern. It is mathematically impossible. A collective gasp swept through the room. The court reporter stopped typing for a split second, stunned. Judge Holloway stared at the screen. Then he slowly turned his head toward Harrison Prescott. The billionaire was gripping the arms of his chair so hard the leather creaked. "Mr. Blackwood," the judge said, his voice dangerously low, "it appears your client has submitted fabricated evidence to a court of law. Do you have an explanation?" Blackwood stood up, tugging at his collar. "Your Honor, I was unaware of the provenance of the file. My client assured me." "Save it," Holloway snapped. "Strike the voicemail from the record. And Mr. Prescott, I am holding you in contempt. But we aren't done yet. Mrs. Prescott, you said you were protecting him from prison. Faking a voicemail is perjury, certainly, but you implied something far worse." Alice took a deep breath. This was the point of no return. She was about to burn down the house she had helped build. "The AI isn't just used for deep fakes, Your Honor," she said. "Harrison has been licensing Vocalize to foreign entities restricted by trade embargoes. He's selling the technology to state actors who use it for misinformation campaigns. That's where the money for the Tuscany villa came from. That's where the money for the IPO is coming from. And he's using the household accounts, my accounts, to wash the transaction fees so his hands look clean." Harrison jumped to his feet. "She's lying. She's violating her NDA. Stop her." "Sit down." The bailiff moved toward Harrison. "I have the server logs," Alice said, her voice rising over the chaos. "I didn't just sit in silence for 3 weeks. I was waiting for the decryption key to cycle. Harrison changes it every 30 days. It cycled this morning at 8 a.m. While Mr. Blackwood was giving his opening statement, my cloud script cracked the new key. I have every transaction, every email, every illegal sale." She looked at her lawyer, Gregory Miller. "Give the judge the USB drive." Gregory, looking like a man who had just won the lottery, but was afraid to cash the ticket, pulled a small silver drive from his pocket and handed it to the bailiff. The tables had not just turned, they had flipped over and crushed Harrison Prescott. The immediate aftermath of Alice's testimony was chaos. Judge Holloway called an emergency recess. The federal marshals were called to secure the courtroom exits, not for Alice, but to ensure Harrison didn't flee. Alice was escorted to a private witness room. For the first time in months, she felt blood returning to her fingertips. Gregory Miller paced the small room, sweating profusely. "Alice, do you realize what you've done? Violating an NDA is a civil matter, but exposing international trade violations. The FBI is going to be here in an hour. Prescott Dynamics stock is going to zero. I don't care about the stock, Gregory, Alice said, pouring herself a cup of coffee. I care about Leo. Harrison was going to take him. He was going to take him to Singapore next month. I saw the one-way tickets in the encrypted files. He wasn't planning on sharing custody. He was planning on disappearing. Gregory froze. Kidnapping. He calls it relocation, Alice said bitterly. The door to the witness room banged open. It wasn't the bailiff. It was Jessica Vane. The poised, perfect mistress looked unhinged. Her hair was disheveled, and her eyes were wild. "You stupid bitch!" Jessica screamed, lunging at Alice. Gregory stepped in between them, holding his hands up. "Miss Vane, get out of here before I have you arrested for assault." "You ruined everything!" Jessica spat, struggling against Gregory's arm. "We were so close. The deal was closing on Friday. Do you know how much money you just burned?" Alice set her coffee down. She walked around Gregory and stood toe-to-toe with the younger woman. Up close, she could see the cracks in Jessica's foundation, the fear, the greed. "This wasn't about love, was it, Jessica?" Alice asked quietly. "Harrison isn't just your boyfriend. He's your mark." Jessica laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Love? Please. Harrison is a narcissist who can't tie his own shoes without someone telling him he's brilliant. I didn't steal him from you, Alice. I just took over the babysitting shift. But the payout was supposed to be mine." "You're a corporate spy," Alice deduced. "Who are you working for? Omnicorp? Tech Global?" Jessica sneered. "Does it matter? They're all the same. But here's the thing you didn't count on, Alice. Harrison isn't the only one with insurance." Jessica reached into her purse. Gregory flinched, thinking she had a weapon. Instead, she pulled out a phone. "You think you have the moral high ground?" Jessica hissed. "You think you're the perfect mother protecting her cub? Let's see how the judge likes this." She tapped the screen and turned it toward Alice. It was a video. Grainy, shot from a hidden camera in the Prescott living room about 6 months ago. In the video, Alice was sitting on the floor, surrounded by pill bottles. She was sobbing, rocking back and forth, screaming at an empty room. It looked bad. It looked like a psychotic break. "I was filming," Jessica whispered. "I was there that day. I swapped your anxiety meds for hallucinogens, Alice. Just a mild dose. Enough to make you act crazy. Enough to get this footage." Alice felt the room spin. The memory of that day was a blur. She had thought she was having a breakdown. She had thought she was losing her mind. "You poisoned me," Alice whispered. "I expedited the inevitable," Jessica corrected. "I'm going to show this to the judge. I'm going to show him that even if Harrison is a crook, you are chemically unbalanced. You'll never get Leo." "You admit to drugging her?" Gregory asked, his voice shaking with rage. "I'm a witness to this confession." "It's my word against yours," Jessica shrugged. "And unlike you, I have video evidence of her looking like a lunatic. Who cares why she was screaming? The court only cares that she was screaming." Jessica turned to leave, her hand on the doorknob. "Wait," Alice said. Jessica turned back, a triumphant smirk on her lips. "Begging. I like it." "No," Alice said. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her own phone. "I'm not begging. I'm asking you to check your email." Jessica frowned. "What?" "I'm the admin for the family cloud account, Jessica. Every device that connects to the Wi-Fi at the house backs up automatically, including yours." Jessica's face went white. "I found the video months ago," Alice said. "But I also found the search history on your phone from that same week. Searches for how to induce psychosis, interactions between Xanax and LSD, and non-traceable poisons. And I found the receipt for the Bitcoin transaction, where you bought the drugs on the dark web. Alice took a step forward. "Go ahead," Alice said coldly. "Show the judge the video. I'll show him the receipt for the poison. And then, instead of just losing your payout, you'll be sharing a cell with Harrison." Jessica stared at Alice. The smirk was gone, replaced by pure terror. She realized too late that she wasn't playing against a scorned wife. She was playing against a grandmaster. "What do you want?" Jessica whispered. "I want you to go back into that courtroom," Alice said. "And when the judge asks you about Harrison's finances, you are going to tell him everything. Every account number, every password. You're going to turn on him to save yourself." "He'll kill me," Jessica said. "No," Alice replied. "He won't be able to touch you, because by the time you're done talking, he'll be in handcuffs." Court reconvened at 2:00 p.m. The atmosphere was electric. The press gallery was overflowing. Word had leaked that something massive was happening in courtroom 302. Harrison Prescott looked disheveled. His tie was loosened, and he was furiously whispering to Silas Blackwood. When he saw Jessica enter, he reached out to grab her arm, but she pulled away violently and went to sit on the far side of the bench, behind the prosecutor's table. Judge Holloway banged his gavel. "We are back on record. Mrs. Prescott, you are still under oath." Alice sat on the stand. She looked tired, but resolute. "Your Honor." Silas Blackwood stood up, trying to regain control. "We move for a mistrial. The evidence introduced is—" "Denied," Holloway cut him off. "Mr. Blackwood, your client is currently being investigated by the SEC and the FBI based on the evidence provided before lunch. But this is family court. My primary concern is the welfare of Leo Prescott. We are pivoting to custody." "My client is a devoted father," Blackwood insisted. "Is he?" Judge Holloway asked. "We have heard allegations of fraud, perjury, and international crimes. It speaks to character." "We would like to call a character witness," Blackwood said desperately. "We call Sarah Miller, the family nanny." Alice stiffened. Sarah, the nanny who had received the $50,000 bonus. Alice had assumed Sarah was paid off to lie. Sarah walked in. She was a middle-aged woman, kind-faced but nervous. She avoided eye contact with Harrison. "Ms. Miller," Blackwood began, "you have cared for Leo for 3 years. Have you ever seen Mr. Prescott act in a way that endangered the child?" Sarah took a deep breath. She looked at Harrison, who stared at her with intense, threatening eyes. Then she looked at Alice. Alice gave her a barely perceptible nod. "Yes," Sarah said. The courtroom gasped again. Blackwood froze. I think you misunderstood the question. I asked if—" "I heard you," Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. "Mr. Prescott endangers Leo constantly. Not physically, maybe. He doesn't hit him, but he ignores him. He locks him in his room for hours so he can take calls. And there's something else." "What else?" Judge Holloway asked gently. "The game room," Sarah said. "Mr. Prescott set up a testing room for his AI software. He makes Leo go in there. He makes him wear a headset for hours. He calls it training the algorithm. Leo comes out crying. He says the voices in the headset sound like his mother, saying terrible things to him." Alice let out a choked sob. She covered her mouth with her hand. Harrison had been using their son as a test subject. He had been using the AI to simulate Alice's voice, screaming at the boy to stress test the emotional recognition software. And simultaneously, he was brainwashing the child to fear his own mother. "He told me," Sarah continued, tears streaming down her face, "that if I told anyone, he would ruin me. He gave me $50,000 and told me it was hush money. But I can't do it anymore. I can't watch him torture that little boy." Harrison slammed his fist on the table. "She's a liar. Alice paid her double. This is a conspiracy." "Mr. Prescott, silence," Judge Holloway roared. "I have the recordings," Sarah said. She reached into her bag. "I recorded the sessions through the door. You can hear Leo begging for it to stop. You can hear the machine. It sounds like Alice screaming at him." She handed a small digital recorder to the bailiff. Judge Holloway didn't need to play it for the whole room. The look on Sarah's face was evidence enough. "I've heard enough," Judge Holloway said. He looked at Harrison with pure disgust. "Harrison Prescott, I am stripping you of all custody rights effective immediately. I am issuing a permanent restraining order. You are not to come within 500 yards of Leo Prescott or Alice Prescott." "You can't do this," Harrison screamed, his composure shattering completely. "I'm Harrison Prescott. I built this city. You're a nobody judge in a cheap robe. And you," Judge Holloway said calmly, "are a defendant in a federal criminal case. Marshal, take him into custody. I'm revoking bail due to flight risk." 2 federal marshals stepped forward. Harrison tried to run. He actually tried to scramble over the barrier toward the public exit. It was pathetic. He was tackled before he made it 3 steps. As they handcuffed him, dragging him out of the courtroom, he screamed profanities at Alice. He screamed that she was nothing without him. Alice watched him go. She felt light, weightless, but it wasn't over. As the noise of Harrison's arrest faded, Judge Holloway looked at Alice. "Mrs. Prescott," he said, "the court grants you full legal and physical custody. The assets of the marriage are frozen, pending the federal investigation. But I am granting you access to the liquid funds necessary for your son's care." "Thank you, Your Honor," Alice whispered. "Don't thank me yet," the judge said. His face was grave. "We have a problem. The bailiff just received a note from the court officer stationed at your sister-in-law's house, where Leo is staying." Alice's heart stopped. "What? Is he okay?" "The officer arrived to secure the child," Judge Holloway said slowly. "But the house is empty. Leo is gone." Alice stood up, her chair clattering backward. "Gone?" "Harrison's sister is missing too, and according to flight logs." The judge hesitated. "A private charter took off from Teterboro Airport 40 minutes ago, filed for a flight plan to a non-extradition country. Harrison hadn't just planned to run. He had triggered the escape plan before the verdict. He had sacrificed himself in the courtroom to buy time for his sister to get the boy out of the country." Alice looked at the empty door where Harrison had been dragged out. He had been laughing. Now she knew why. He hadn't lost. He had just changed the battlefield. Alice turned to Gregory. Her eyes were dry, but they burned with a terrifying intensity. "Get my laptop," she said. "Alice, call the FBI," Gregory said. "They can ground the plane." "They'll take too long," Alice said. She started walking toward the door, her stride long and purposeful. "Harrison built that plane. He designed the avionics, which means he put a back door in the navigation system." "What are you going to do?" Gregory asked, running to keep up with her. Alice pushed open the courtroom doors, the cameras flashing in her face. She ignored them all. "I'm not going to ground the plane," she said. "I'm going to hijack it." The conference room at Gregory Miller's law firm had been transformed into a command center. It was a stark contrast to the wood-paneled courtroom. Here, amidst take-out coffee cups and tangled wires, the air hummed with the cooling fans of servers and the frantic energy of federal agents. Special Agent Miller of the FBI stood over Alice's shoulder. He was a man accustomed to being in charge, and he clearly didn't like that a civilian, a distraught mother, as he had called her, was driving the operation. "Mrs. Prescott, you have 3 minutes before they cross into international airspace," Miller barked, checking his watch. "Once they hit the Atlantic Gap, we lose radar tracking. We need to scramble fighters now to force them down." "If you scramble fighters," Alice said, her fingers flying across the keyboard of her laptop, "Captain Weber will panic. He's a former mercenary on Harrison's payroll. If he sees F-16s, he'll drop the bird to 500 feet to evade radar, and at that speed, with the turbulence today, he could crash. I'm not risking Leo." "So your plan is to hack a Gulfstream G650 in mid-air?" Miller scoffed. "That's impossible. The avionics are air-gapped." "Harrison is paranoid," Alice murmured, her eyes scanning lines of cascading code. "But he's also a narcissist. He wanted total control over the environment. The plane has a customized version of Vocalize integrated into the cabin management system. He wanted to be able to dim the lights, change the course, and lock the cockpit just by speaking." "So?" "So," Alice said, hitting the Enter key with a sharp crack. "The cabin system talks to the flight computer, and the cabin system is connected to the satellite internet for streaming." On the large screen at the front of the room, a map showed a small red dot moving steadily east, away from the coast of New Jersey. It was the Obsidian, Harrison's private jet. It was carrying his sister, Caroline, and 7-year-old Leo toward a country with no extradition treaty with the US. "I'm in the entertainment subsystem," Alice announced. "I have access to the cabin speakers." "That doesn't help us fly the plane," Gregory Miller said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "No," Alice said, "but Harrison can fly the plane." She opened the audio synthesis program, the same one Harrison had used to fake her hateful voicemail. She pulled up the archive of Harrison's voice. Thousands of hours of speeches, interviews, and private recordings. "Agent Miller," Alice said, "I need you to be quiet. I'm about to perform a handshake protocol with the jet's AI. If the voice print is off by even a microhertz, the system locks down." The room went deathly silent. Alice typed a command script. "Override Arth voice. CMD Priority 1. She put on her headset. She wasn't speaking to a person. She was speaking to the machine. But the voice that came out of the speakers in the jet, 30,000 feet above the ocean, wouldn't be hers. 7-year-old Leo was sitting in the plush leather seat, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. His Aunt Caroline was pacing the aisle, sipping champagne nervously. "Are we there yet?" Leo asked, his voice small. "Quiet, Leo," Caroline snapped. She looked at the intercom. "Captain, how long until we're clear?" 2 minutes, Miss Prescott," the pilot's voice crackled. "Just crossing the boundary now." Suddenly the cabin lights flickered red. The ambient music cut out. A voice boomed through the cabin speakers. It was Harrison. "Captain Weber, this is Harrison. Code Red. Repeat, Code Red." Caroline froze. "Harrison, I thought you were arrested." "The arrest was a diversion," the synthesized voice of Harrison continued. It was perfect. It had his cadence, his arrogance, his slight vocal fry. "The feds are tracking the transponder. They set a trap at the destination. You are flying into an ambush." "What?" Caroline screamed at the ceiling. "You told us to go. We're almost there." "Abort," the voice commanded. "New coordinates uploaded. You need to return to Teterboro immediately. Stay low. Silence the transponder. I have a team waiting to extract you on the tarmac before the feds realize you turned back." "Harrison, are you sure?" Caroline asked, trembling. In the law firm conference room, Alice's hands hovered over the keyboard. This was the moment. The AI had to respond to Caroline's doubt in real time. Alice typed the response, and the AI generated the audio instantly. "Do not question me, Caroline," the Harrison voice thundered. "Turn the plane around, now. or you'll spend the rest of your life in a black site prison. Do it." Caroline grabbed the intercom. "Webber, turn around. Harrison says it's a trap. Go back to Teterboro." "Copy that," the pilot replied, sounding confused but obedient to the man who signed his paychecks. Turning about. ETA 40 minutes. On the big screen, the red dot paused. It held its trajectory for a heart-stopping 10 seconds, and then it began to arc. A slow, beautiful U-turn back toward the United States. Alice exhaled, a sound that was half sob, half laugh. She slumped back in her chair. "Target is returning to airspace," Agent Miller said, holding his earpiece. He looked at Alice with a newfound expression. It wasn't just respect. It was fear. "You just social engineered a hijacker using a deep fake of the man who hired him. That was terrifying." "It's not over," Alice said, standing up. "I'm going to the airport." "We'll handle the takedown, Mrs. Prescott," Miller said. "It could be dangerous." Alice grabbed her coat. She looked at the agent with eyes that were harder than diamonds. "That's my son on that plane," she said. "If you think you can stop me from being on that tarmac when he lands, you're welcome to try and arrest me. But I warn you, I know your passwords too." Agent Miller blinked. He stepped aside. "Let's get you a police escort." The tarmac at Teterboro Airport was a sea of flashing blue and red lights. SWAT teams were positioned behind armored vehicles. Snipers lay prone on the rooftops of the hangars. Alice stood by a black SUV, the wind whipping her hair across her face. She didn't feel the cold. She felt only the vibration of the ground as the Gulf Stream taxied to a halt. The stairs lowered. "Police, hands on your heads." The shout went up from a dozen megaphones. Captain Webber and the co-pilot came out first, hands raised. Then Caroline, looking pale and defeated, stumbling in her high heels. She was immediately cuffed and led away. For a long moment, the doorway was empty. Alice's heart hammered against her ribs. Please be okay." Then a small figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Leo. He was holding his dinosaur by the tail, looking out at the wall of armed men with wide, terrified eyes. "Leo!" Alice screamed, breaking the police line. "Mum, stay back!" An officer shouted. "Let her go!" Agent Miller commanded from the side. Alice ran. She ran across the oil-stained concrete, ignoring the protocols, ignoring the danger. She reached the bottom of the stairs just as Leo started to descend. He saw her. His face crumpled. "Mommy?" She scooped him up before his feet touched the ground. She buried her face in his neck, smelling the scent of his shampoo and the stale, recycled air of the plane. He wrapped his legs around her waist and sobbed. "I've got you," she whispered fiercely into his ear. "I've got you. It's over. The quiet part is over." 6 months later, the boardroom of Prescott Dynamics was glass and steel, floating high above the Manhattan skyline. The table was occupied by 12 men in expensive suits, the board of directors. They looked nervous. The doors opened and Alice walked in. She wasn't wearing the grey, 3 seasons old suit anymore. She was wearing a tailored white blazer, sharp and immaculate. She didn't look like the ice queen of the courtroom. She looked like the CEO. Harrison's shares had been seized by the DOJ as part of his plea deal to avoid a life sentence for treason. Per the divorce settlement and a complex restructuring approved by the SEC, control of the voting trust had reverted to the original co-founder, Alice. She walked to the head of the table. She didn't sit down. She placed a single file folder on the mahogany surface. "Gentlemen," she began. Her voice was calm, authoritative. "We have some changes to make." Alice, one of the older board members, a man named Miller, no relation to the agent, cleared his throat. "We understand you want to pivot." But Vocalize is our most profitable division. You can't just shut down the government contracts." "I'm not shutting down Vocalize," Alice said. "I'm reprogramming it. The source code is being rewritten to detect deepfakes, not create them. We are going to be the world's leading authentication security firm. We aren't selling lies anymore. We're selling the truth." "The stock will tank," another member protested. "The market wants the generative tech." "The market wants stability," Alice countered. "And if you don't like the new direction, you can sell your shares. I'm buying at a premium." She looked around the table. No one moved. They knew who she was now. She wasn't the silent wife. She was the woman who had outsmarted a billionaire, the FBI, and the Russian mob all in one afternoon. "Good," Alice said. "Meeting adjourned. I have a school pickup to make." The Federal Correctional Institution in Otisville was a grim place, despite being a white-collar facility. Alice sat in the visitation room. She waited patiently. Harrison was led in. He looked different. The tan was gone. His hair was thinning. The arrogance that had been his armor was dented, rusted. He sat down opposite her, picking up the phone receiver. Alice picked up hers. "You look good," Harrison said. His voice was raspy. "Is that a new suit?" "It is," Alice said. "I heard you rebranded the company." Harrison sneered slightly, trying to find his old rhythm. "Authentication security? Boring, Mel. No vision." "Profitable," Alice corrected. "And legal." Harrison sighed. He looked at the glass partition. "Why are you here? To gloat? To tell me you won?" Alice looked at him. She thought about the years of gaslighting. She thought about the courtroom. She thought about the plane. "No," Alice said. "I came to bring you this." She held up a drawing against the glass. It was a crayon picture. A stick-figure boy holding hands with a stick-figure woman, standing under a bright yellow sun. There was no father in the picture. "Leo drew it yesterday," Alice said. "He's doing well. He's in therapy. He doesn't ask about you anymore." Harrison stared at the drawing. His lip trembled. For the first time, the reality of his isolation hit him. He had lost his legacy, his money, and his blood. "I want to see him," Harrison whispered. "Please. I have rights." "You have a restraining order," Alice said, "and a 20-year sentence." "Alice, please," Harrison begged, his hand pressing against the glass. "Say something. Scream at me. Tell me you hate me. Just don't look at me like I'm a stranger." Alice stood up. She hung the phone back on the cradle. On the other side of the glass, Harrison was shouting, slamming the receiver against the wall, mouthing words she couldn't hear. "Talk to me. Talk to me." Alice watched him for a moment. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She simply adjusted her bag, turned her back, and walked out of the room. She had stayed quiet in court because she was waiting for the right moment to speak. Now she stayed quiet because there was nothing left to say. The Ice Queen had melted, and underneath was steel. And that is how Alice Prescott went from being the silent victim in courtroom 302 to the CEO of her own destiny. She proved that sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't the one with the power. It's the one with the plan. Harrison Prescott thought he could use technology to erase the truth, but he forgot that code, like karma, always executes exactly as written. Alice didn't just win a divorce. She dismantled a criminal empire and saved her son, all without raising her voice until it mattered most. It's a reminder to never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes, the quiet ones are just counting the seconds until they strike. Wow, what a journey for Alice. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, justice, and high-tech twists, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. What would you have done in Alice's shoes? Would you have taken the plea deal, or would you have fought back? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new story. We drop new dramas every week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.